As somebody who's been studying history for the last 6 years, truth is something that I am no longer interested in. And I know that that is a dangerous thing to say, especially as so many people have said, we are living in a kind of post-truth age. But what I mean is that basically, there is a difference between testimony and evidence, and this was a concept that was introduced to me way back in my first year of undergrad, and the idea was introduced in a book chapter from this book called Echographies by Bernard Stiegler and Jacques Derrida, and the chapter is The Archival Market, Truth, Testimony, and Evidence, and in it, Stiegler and Derrida are having a conversation, and Derrida is saying that we need to distinguish between testimony and evidence. And to illustrate this point, he brings up the Rodney King case, which was an infamous police brutality case in 1991 in Los Angeles. And what made it so infamous and distinguished it from other police brutality cases, because of course there have been so many, is that it was one of the first instances where it was recorded, because there just so happened to be a young man recording the event, not for any particular reason, except that he had recently received a camera as a gift from his father. And so there was this evidence, this technical evidence, this video recording that was shown in the courts and distributed around the world that created so much outcry, but it didn't stop the police officers' lawyers from crafting a different kind of testimony where they slowed it down second by second and said, look, in that moment, King fights back, and so the police officers were justified in doing what they did. And obviously, this didn't hold up, and the police officers were charged, but it demonstrated to Derrida that there is this fundamental difference between testimony and evidence. And he writes, quote, "The videographic recording may have served as an archive, perhaps as an exhibit, perhaps as evidence, but it did not replace testimony. It is possible for testimony to be corroborated by evidence, but the process of evidence is absolutely heterogeneous to that of testimony." And in my own work, I've been really reliant on oral histories. And during my thesis writing, I made a really intentional epistemological decision to not try to corroborate what my interviewees said with archival evidence, because I wasn't interested in finding the truth between the evidence and the testimony, but instead taking the testimony at face value and telling that story. Because archives and evidence are not infallible, and just like testimonies, they are always already imperfect and biased and laden with abstraction, intervention, and privilege. And I know that that isn't good historical practice. I know that what I'm doing is not capital H history. But especially with Palestine, when a lot of our archives, a lot of our evidence have been destroyed, we rely on oral histories and on testimonies as a kind of historical reparation and restoration. And so I'm interested in this question of how far can testimony take us without evidence? Anyway, I thought I was going to finish folding my laundry while I went on about these half-formed thoughts, but I am still surrounded by my laundry.